A World War II soldier could survive weeks without comfort, but only hours without shelter. In frozen forests, flooded fields, and mud that swallowed boots whole, survival didn't depend on heroics. It depended on smart shelter. And, some of the shelter hacks developed during World War II were so effective, so brutally practical, that they still make modern survival experts nod in respect. This isn't about grand barracks or famous bunkers. This is about the small, gritty tricks ordinary soldiers used when the weather turned hostile and there was just no safe place to hide. These were shelters built under fire, in darkness, with numb fingers and limited gear. And somehow they worked. Let's jump straight into the field. The foxhole is often remembered as a defensive position, but in World War II it quietly evolved into a full survival shelter. Soldiers learned fast that a shallow hole was a death trap in rain or snow, so they dug deeper, wider, and, smarter. The goal wasn't just cover from bullets, it was insulation, drainage, and warmth. Veterans described shaping the hole like a coffin with a raised sleeping ledge. Water settled at the bottom while the body stayed dry above it. A poncho, ground sheet, or even flattened ration boxes lined the walls to slow heat loss. In winter, snow piled around the rim acted like insulation. It looked crude, but underground temperatures stayed more stable than the open air. This wasn't comfort, it was survival geometry. Most World War II armies issued shelter halves. Small triangular or rectangular canvas sheets meant to be buttoned together. Alone, one half was barely useful. Combined with a buddy's half, it became a weatherproof wedge tent that could handle rain, wind, and light snow. The clever part was how soldiers adapted it. They pitched low to the ground to block wind, angled openings away from weather, and reinforced edges with mud or snow. In forests, branches formed frames. In open fields, rifles or bayonets acted as tent poles. This system worked because it was modular. Lose one piece, and the shelter still functioned in some form. In a war where supply lines collapsed, that flexibility really mattered. On the Eastern Front and in alpine regions, soldiers learned a hard truth. Fast canvas tents failed in deep cold. Snow shelters didn't. German, Soviet, Finnish and Allied troops all discovered variations of the same trick, digging into snowbanks or building low snow walls around sleeping areas. Snow, counterintuitively, is an excellent insulator. A thin layer blocks wind and traps body heat. Soldiers carved shallow snow caves or windbreaks, then covered themselves with ponchos or blankets. The inside temperature could be dozens of degrees warmer than outside. The key was ventilation. A small air hole prevented suffocation. It was primitive physics, learned the hard way, and it saved lives nightly. Rain didn't just soak soldiers. It killed morale, rotted feet, and turned trenches into graves. One of the smartest shelter hacks was the trench roof. Soldiers laid logs, planks, or even scrap metal across trench tops, then piled dirt on top. The result was a crude but effective overhead cover. This roof blocked rain, snow and debris while also breaking up enemy observation from above. In some cases, soldiers layered tarps or shelter halves beneath the dirt to improve waterproofing. Air gaps were left to prevent collapse and allow smoke to escape. It wasn't fancy, but it turned open trenches into livable spaces during endless storms. Mud was the enemy until it became the solution. WWII soldiers learned to use mud like cement. They plastered it over tent edges, filled gaps in walls, and sealed drafts in dugouts. When dried, mud hardened enough to block wind and water. In Normandy hedgerows, Italian hills and Pacific islands, soldiers mixed mud with grass or straw to reinforce walls. This added strength and prevented cracking. It's an ancient technique older than history itself, rediscovered under fire. Mud was everywhere, free and effective. In a war defined by logistics, that made it priceless. When movement was constant, permanent shelters weren't possible. That's where the lean-to came in. A simple angled roof made from a poncho, shelter half, or tarp, supported by a tree or rifle. The brilliance wasn't the design, it was speed. Experienced soldiers could set one up in under 5 minutes. The angle shed rain and snow, while a small fire placed in front reflected heat inward. Leaves, pine needles, or straw layered underneath acted as insulation. The lean-to wasn't meant to last. It was meant to get you through one brutal night, and often that was enough. Ground moisture was a silent killer. Cold, damp earth drained body heat relentlessly. So, soldiers improvised raised sleeping platforms using logs, branches, ration crates, or even ammunition boxes. Elevation of just a few inches made a dramatic difference. In jungle and wet environments, this trick was essential. It reduced exposure to water, insects and disease. In colder climates, it preserved warmth. Combined with a poncho or blanket underneath, the platform turned miserable ground into something survivable. It was a small adjustment with massive payoff. Shelter wasn't just about staying dry, it was about staying hidden. Soldiers blended shelter construction with camouflage techniques. They covered tents and dugouts with branches, sod, snow, or debris taken from the surrounding area. This served two purposes. It broke up visual outlines, and it added insulation. Fresh vegetation trapped air, snow layers blocked wind, earth absorbed temperature swings. A well-camouflaged shelter wasn't just invisible, it was warmer, quieter and safer. This dual-purpose thinking defined World War II fieldcraft. Here's the interesting part. None of these techniques rely on modern materials. No synthetic fabrics, no advanced tools, just physics, observation and experience. That's why they still matter today. Modern survival manuals still teach foxhole drainage, snow insulation, raised sleep-in and lean-to construction. The core ideas haven't changed because human needs haven't changed. Stay dry, stay warm, stay hidden. World War II soldiers learned these lessons under extreme pressure, and their solutions were refined by necessity. For the Before Modern Times channel, these shelter hacks fit perfectly into the story of human ingenuity before high-tech convenience. They remind us that survival isn't about gear. It's about understanding environment and adapting fast. And if there's one takeaway from World War II sheltercraft, it's this. The best shelter is rarely the strongest or prettiest. It's the one you can build right now with what you have before the weather wins. If you enjoyed uncovering these forgotten survival skills, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Before Modern Times, and share this story with anyone who appreciates real-world ingenuity from history. More hidden knowledge, More practical wisdom and more incredible human solutions are coming next. Stay curious and stay sheltered.